It was the tank that made even the bravest soldiers tremble, a machine whispered about in foxholes, cursed in dispatches, and immortalized in legend. To the Allies of World War II, the mere mention of its name was enough to send a chill through the ranks. The German Tiger I. For those who faced it, the Tiger was not just a weapon, it was a nightmare made of steel. It appeared from the smoke of battle like some great mechanical beast, its thick armor glinting under the sun, its massive gun swinging slowly toward its prey. When it fired, there was no warning, no escape. Allied tanks that dared to challenge it were often destroyed before they could even return fire. But behind its terrifying reputation lay a story of irony, of engineering brilliance tangled with fatal flaws, of power undermined by pride, and of a weapon that embodied both the strength and the weakness of Nazi Germany itself. The Tiger I was feared, yes, but it was also doomed. The story begins in the early years of the war, when Germany's armored forces seemed unstoppable. In 1939 and 1940, the panzer divisions rolled across Europe with shocking speed, crushing Poland, France, and the Low Countries in a matter of weeks. The world watched in disbelief as Hitler's armies rewrote the rules of modern warfare. The Blitzkrieg, lightning war, had proven devastatingly effective. But by 1941, as German forces pushed deep into the Soviet Union, cracks began to appear in the myth of invincibility. The Wehrmacht standard tanks, the Panzer III and Panzer IV, were no longer unmatched. On the Eastern Front, they met a new and terrifying adversary, the Soviet Tu-34. The Tu-34 was everything the Germans had not anticipated: fast, mobile, and heavily armored. Its sloped armor deflected shells that would have destroyed any German tank of the time, and its 76mm gun could pierce through the Panzer III's armor with ease. The German soldiers, once accustomed to victory, suddenly found themselves outgunned and outmatched. Reports flooded Berlin describing how entire panzer formations were being wiped out by the new Soviet machines. Hitler's response was immediate and absolute. In 1941, he ordered the development of a new tank, one that would surpass the Tu-34 in every respect. It would have thicker armor, a more powerful gun, and an aura of invincibility. It would become the ultimate symbol of German engineering, a weapon to restore the Reich's dominance on the battlefield. The order went to Henschel and Porsche, two of Germany's most prestigious engineering firms. Both were tasked with designing prototypes, and the competition between them was fierce. Ferdinand Porsche, the famed automotive engineer, believed his electric drive design would revolutionize armored warfare. Henschel, led by engineer Erwin Adders, focused on a more conventional but reliable mechanical approach. By April 1942, the prototypes were ready. Hitler personally attended the demonstration at Rassenburg, his Eastern Front headquarters. The two massive machines, each weighing over 50 tons, lumbered before him across a field. Both designs were impressive, far beyond anything the world had seen. But while Porsche's version was plagued by mechanical issues, Henschel's performed flawlessly. The decision was made: Henschel's design would become the Tiger I. Production began almost immediately. The new tank was a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Its 88mm kilowatt K-36 gun, derived from the legendary 88mm anti-aircraft gun, was among the most feared weapons of the war. It could destroy an enemy tank from over 2 miles away, long before the opponent's guns could even reach it. Its armor, up to 120mm thick on the front, was nearly impervious to Allied fire. When the first Tiger I tanks rolled off the assembly line in August 1942, they represented the pinnacle of German armored technology. Each one took thousands of man-hours to produce and cost the equivalent of several medium tanks. But to Hitler, cost was irrelevant. He wanted a weapon that could dominate, a tank that would strike fear into the hearts of the enemy and restore the Reich's aura of superiority. The Tiger made its combat debut near Leningrad in late 1942. The results were mixed. On paper, it was unstoppable. In practice, it was plagued by mechanical problems. Many of the early models broke down before they even reached the front. Their immense weight strained engines, snapped transmission gears, and bogged down in the mud of the Eastern Front. The German crews quickly learned that the Tiger was as temperamental as it was deadly. But when it worked, it was terrifying. At Tunis in 1943, the British 1st Armoured Division encountered Tigers for the first time in North Africa. The outcome was devastating. The British Churchill and Sherman tanks, firing desperately at the approaching German armor, watched in horror as their shells bounced harmlessly off the Tiger's thick front plate. The Tiger returned fire, and within moments, entire platoons of Allied tanks were burning wrecks. Soldiers described the sound of the 88mm gun as a deep, cracking thunder that could be felt in the chest. Word spread quickly. Allied tank crews began whispering about a new German monster, a tank that could appear seemingly out of nowhere and destroy them before they had time to react. To face a Tiger was to gamble with death. Its silhouette became legendary, the boxy hull, the massive gun barrel, the deep growl of its Maybach engine. The Tiger was no longer just a weapon, it was psychological warfare. Yet behind its fearsome reputation, the Tiger's flaws were growing impossible to ignore. Its complexity made it extremely difficult to produce and maintain. Every tank required weeks of skilled labor and a supply chain that stretched across a continent already being bombed daily by the Allies. Its fuel consumption was enormous, more than double that of a Panzer IV, and Germany's oil reserves were dwindling fast. The Tiger's mechanical reliability was equally fragile. Its transmission was under constant strain from its 57-ton weight, and even minor damage could immobilize the tank. On the battlefield, many Tigers were lost not to enemy fire, but to breakdowns, mud, or fuel shortages. Crews often had to destroy their own tanks to prevent capture. Still, in the hands of an experienced crew, the Tiger remained a deadly opponent. Few were more feared than Michael Wittmann, one of Germany's most celebrated tank aces. Wittmann's name became synonymous with the Tiger's legend. On June 13, 1944, near the French village of Villers-Bocage, Wittmann and his Tiger single-handedly ambushed a British armoured column. In less than 15 minutes, he destroyed 14 tanks, 15 armoured vehicles, and 2 anti-tank guns. Allied soldiers were stunned, they had never witnessed such destruction from a single tank. The Tiger's reputation soared. Propaganda films and newsreels glorified Wittmann's victories, portraying him as a modern knight of the Rye. But for every Tiger that achieved glory, there were dozens more bogged down in mud, out of fuel, or destroyed by air attacks. The Tiger was not a tank built for the kind of war Germany was now fighting, a war of attrition, speed, and overwhelming Allied production. By 1943 and 1944, the Allies had learned to adapt. They developed new tactics, new weapons, and new ways to counter the Tiger's dominance. American and British engineers designed improved versions of the Sherman and Churchill, equipping them with high-velocity guns capable of piercing the Tiger's side armor. The Soviet Union introduced the IS-2, a heavy tank with a powerful 122mm gun that could destroy a Tiger with a single well-placed shot. But the Allies' most decisive weapon against the Tiger wasn't another tank, it was the airplane. By 1944, Allied air superiority was absolute. Fighter bombers like the PF-47 Thunderbolt and the Hawker Typhoon roamed the skies, hunting German armor with rockets and bombs. The Tiger, with its slow speed and massive profile, was an easy target. Crews learned to dread the sound of aircraft overhead. A single hit could disable the tank, leaving it vulnerable to artillery or capture. The more Germany relied on its super weapons, the more it fell behind in the war's reality. While the Allies churned out thousands of reliable tanks each month, Germany struggled to produce a few dozen Tigers. In total, only about 1,350 Tiger I tanks were ever built, a minuscule number compared to the tens of thousands of Shermans, T-34s, and Churchills that rolled off Allied assembly lines. By late 1944, the Tiger's glory days were over. The front was collapsing, the Reich was in retreat, and the once mighty panzers were being hunted across Europe. Many of the Tiger battalions that had once terrorized the eastern and western fronts were gone, lost to attrition, fuel starvation, or air raids. Even Wittmann, the Tiger's greatest champion, met his end that year when his tank was destroyed near Saint-Ignan-de-Cremesnil by Allied fire. His death marked more than the loss of a soldier, it symbolized the end of an era. The Tiger, once the spearhead of the Wehrmacht's power, had become a relic of a dying empire. Yet even in defeat, the Tiger's legend endured. Allied troops who encountered destroyed Tigers were stunned by their sheer size and construction. Many climbed atop the hulks, marveling at the thickness of the armor, the precision of the engineering. You could feel the craftsmanship, one American GI recalled. It looked like something built by gods, not men. The irony was stark. The Tiger I had been designed to dominate, to terrorize, to embody the might of Germany. But it became instead a monument to excess, a machine so perfect it could not survive the imperfect realities of war. Its downfall was not a lack of strength, but the absence of practicality. For every Tiger that rolled onto the battlefield, dozens of simpler, cheaper tanks rolled out to meet it. And in the end, it was those smaller, less glamorous machines, the Shermans, the T-34s, the Churchills, that won the war. The Tiger was a masterpiece, yes, but it was a masterpiece built for the wrong kind of war. The men who fought in them knew this truth better than anyone. They spoke of the Tiger with a mixture of pride and frustration, proud of its power, frustrated by its fragility. She was a queen, one veteran said years later, but she demanded everything. Fuel, time, care, and sometimes, she took lives even when the enemy didn't. The Tiger I had changed the psychology of warfare. It forced every army that faced it to rethink its tactics, its designs, its courage. But by 1944, even the German soldiers who once worshipped it began to see it for what it was, a symbol of the Reich's obsession with perfection over practicality. The Tiger's thunder faded with the war's end. Those that survived were captured, studied, and displayed as trophies of victory. In Allied museums, they stand silent, immense, and strangely dignified, relics of a time when engineering genius and blind ambition collided in the crucible of war. But the story of the Tiger was not over. Its influence would ripple far beyond 1945, shaping the future of armored warfare for generations to come. The lessons it taught, and the mistakes it revealed, would define the next chapter of military history. When the guns of the Tiger I fell silent, it wasn't always because of defeat in battle. More often, it was because the beast had simply run itself to exhaustion. It was a war machine that demanded constant attention, a tank that could kill anything in its path but was constantly fighting against itself. By 1944, Germany's armored divisions were shadows of what they had once been. The Tiger crews, elite soldiers, many handpicked from panzer regiments, were often fighting without spare parts, without fuel, and without the support they needed to keep their tanks in motion. The great promise of the Tiger had faded into a harsh truth: the Reich superweapon was bleeding itself dry. And yet, for all its flaws, the Tiger's presence on the battlefield still sent shivers down the spines of its enemies. In the hedgerows of Normandy, Allied troops advancing inland after D-Day began to encounter them again, Tigers lurking in ambush, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their long 88mm guns turned narrow roads and open fields into death traps. One shell from a Tiger could rip through an American Sherman from front to back, igniting ammunition and turning the tank into a fireball. The American tank crews knew what they were up against. They called the Tiger the beast, the monster, and sometimes, just that damn thing. In the Bocage country, where every hedge concealed danger, even a rumor of a Tiger could halt an entire column. Many Allied soldiers didn't actually see one, but they believed they did. The Tiger had become as much a weapon of the mind as of steel. The German tank commanders knew this psychological power. They used it ruthlessly. A single Tiger positioned on a ridge could dominate miles of open terrain. Its long-range gun meant it could destroy Allied tanks before they even came within striking distance. Allied gunners would fire round after round, only to watch their shells bounce harmlessly off the Tiger's armor. But those who commanded the Tigers also knew their vulnerabilities. The tank's massive bulk made it difficult to maneuver in tight spaces, and its weight often collapsed bridges. Its complex engine required meticulous maintenance, and even the best crews struggled to keep it operational. Every hour of combat could mean hours of repair work. In Normandy, where the terrain was muddy, uneven, and crisscrossed with narrow lanes, the Tiger's disadvantages were magnified. Allied air superiority compounded the problem. German supply convoys were destroyed before they could reach the front. Many Tigers were abandoned, not because they were destroyed in combat, but because they ran out of fuel. A U.S. Army intelligence officer noted in his 1944 report, "The Tiger tank is a weapon of extraordinary power, but it suffers from the same disease as the German war effort: too much precision, not enough practicality. When it runs, it kills. When it stops, it dies." That disease, an obsession with over-engineering, was the Tiger's true enemy. Every Tiger was built almost by hand. Its armor plates had to be precisely fitted and welded. Its gearbox, suspension, and gun assembly demanded highly skilled laborious and resources Germany could no longer spare. Allied bombing campaigns targeted factories and rail lines relentlessly, making the already complicated supply chain even more fragile. At Henschel's Kassel plant, where most Tigers were built, production slowed under the constant threat of air raids. Skilled workers were drafted into the army, replaced by forced laborious with little training. Materials were scarce. By late 1944, the German war machine was collapsing under its own weight, and the Tiger, ironically, became a symbol of that collapse. Still, the Wehrmacht clung to its belief in Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons, that would turn the tide of war. Hitler saw the Tiger and its successor, the Tiger II, King Tiger, as proof that German engineering could still achieve miracles. He believed that superior technology could compensate for the Allies' overwhelming numbers. But wars are not won by perfection. They are won by persistence. While Germany struggled to produce a handful of Tigers each month, America was rolling thousands of Shermans off its assembly lines, tanks that were simple, reliable, and easy to repair in the field. The Soviets, too, were mass-producing T-34s at an astonishing rate. The Allies didn't need to match the Tiger in quality. They simply buried it in quantity. For every Tiger on the battlefield, there were a dozen Allied tanks waiting to swarm it. The Tiger could destroy several before being knocked out, but eventually, sheer numbers won. In the Ardennes, during the winter of 1944–45, the Tiger once again took center stage. In the snowy forests of Belgium, Hitler launched his final offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. German armored divisions, including Tiger battalions, struck hard against American lines. For a brief moment, the old terror returned. Allied units fell back in confusion, and reports of Tigers everywhere spread like wildfire. But the Tiger's roar was already fading. Fuel shortages crippled German mobility. Many tanks, including the mighty Tigers, were left stranded in the snow, their engines silent. Allied air power, once the weather cleared, unleashed devastation. Columns of German armor were reduced to burning wrecks. The offensive that Hitler had hoped would turn the tide instead marked the beginning of the end. Among the ruins of that campaign lay the truth of the Tiger's fate. The very qualities that made it fearsome, its armor, its gun, its complexity, were also its undoing. It was a weapon designed for victory, but born into defeat. After the war, Allied engineers examined captured Tigers in detail. They were astonished by the craftsmanship. British and American tank designers admitted that no Allied tank of the war matched the Tiger's raw technical excellence. Its armor was thick but precisely angled. Its suspension was advanced. Its optics, especially the Zeiss gun sights, were far superior to anything used by the Allies. Yet the same reports came to a unanimous conclusion: the Tiger was a tactical marvel, but a strategic failure. The British summarized it best in a 1945 intelligence document: the Tiger tank represents the pinnacle of armored vehicle engineering and the triumph of design over practicality. It is too heavy, too complex, too expensive, and too late. To the men who fought in them, however, the Tiger was more than a failed weapon. It was a home, a fortress, and sometimes a coffin. Crews spoke of the bond they formed with their machines and the strange pride that came with commanding such a fearsome vehicle. Hans Müller, a Tiger gunner captured by the Americans in 1945, later recalled, "When we drove into battle, we felt invincible. You could feel the power of it, the way it shuddered when it fired. But we also knew, if she broke down, we were done." The Tiger was a queen, but she was fragile. That paradox defined the Tiger's entire existence. After the war, the surviving Tigers were scattered across Europe. Many were scrapped for their valuable steel. A few were preserved as trophies or museum exhibits. Today, only a handful remain intact, reminders of both the brilliance and the folly of Nazi Germany's quest for technological dominance. The most famous of these survivors is Tiger 131, captured by the British in Tunisia in 1943. It is now housed in the Bovington Tank Museum in England, the only running Tiger eye left in the world. When it rumbles to life during special demonstrations, veterans and enthusiasts alike are drawn to its sound, that deep, resonant growl that once echoed across Europe's battlefields. For many, seeing Tiger 131 in motion is like witnessing history breathe again. The tank's presence is almost haunting. It embodies both the terror and tragedy of the era, a monument to human ingenuity and the destructive power of war. But the Tiger's legacy didn't end in 1945. Its design influenced post-war tank development across the world. The concept of heavy armor and powerful main guns became standard. The US Army's M26 Pershing, the Soviet IS-3, and later the M48 Patton and T-54 all carried the genetic imprint of the Tiger's philosophy. Even NATO's modern tanks, from the American M1 Abrams to the German Leopard 2, can trace their lineage, in spirit if not in steel, to the Tiger I's groundbreaking design principles. The Tiger had proven one thing beyond doubt: a well-armed tank could dominate the battlefield if supported by logistics and strategy. And that was the Tiger's great lesson, the one Germany never fully learned. Technology alone does not win wars. Industry does. Supply lines do. Leadership does. A tank, no matter how powerful, is only as effective as the army and nation behind it. In 1945, when the last Tigers were fighting desperate rearguard actions in the ruins of Berlin, the Reich that had built them was already finished. The once proud panzer divisions were outnumbered, outgunned, and out of hope. The streets that had once echoed with parades of triumph were now filled with the wreckage of their own machines. In the final days, some Tiger crews fought to the end, others sabotaged their tanks to prevent capture. For many of them, it wasn't about victory anymore, it was about pride, about going down with the machine that had defined their war. When the Red Army rolled into Berlin, they found the remains of several Tigers scattered among the rubble. Some had been destroyed in battle, others had been deliberately blown up by their crews. The mighty beasts that once terrorized continents now lay silent, hulks of twisted metal beneath the falling Reich. In the years that followed, the Tiger's image grew even larger in memory than it ever had in war. Movies, books, and documentaries turned it into the ultimate symbol of German engineering, that invincible tank that had terrified the Allies. Its flaws faded in popular imagination, replaced by myth. Hollywood's portrayal of the Tiger cemented that legend. Films like Kelly's Heroes and Fury revived the fear and fascination that surrounded it. To this day, many believe the Tiger was unbeatable, a belief that speaks to the power of its legacy, not its record. Because the truth is this, the Tiger I, for all its reputation, did not change the outcome of the war. It could dominate a battlefield, but not a war. It was a symbol of Germany's brilliance and its blindness. The Tiger's downfall was the downfall of Nazi Germany itself, a story of ambition outpacing reality, of arrogance blinding strategy, of brilliance undone by hubris. And yet, standing before a Tiger today, one cannot help but feel awe. The thick steel, the cold geometry, the brutal beauty of it, it's impossible not to imagine what it must have been like to see one advancing toward you, its gun turning with slow inevitability. For the men who faced it, the Tiger was the embodiment of fear. For the men who built it, it was the embodiment of pride. For history, it became a warning. Because the Tiger I, in the end, was both magnificent and tragic, a weapon that showed what humanity could achieve, and what it could destroy in pursuit of power. It was the tank that terrified the world and doomed its makers.